Justin Petty, Justinpetty. When I think about water, I think about the multitude of values that I place upon it, the life-giving values of fresh water for drinking, growing food, the recreational values that we have in the great state of Idaho, to spend time out on rivers, floating and catching fish, the values that our wildlife and nature place upon fresh water. Salmon and steelhead and anadromous fish that spawn in Idaho waters and travel 900 miles to the oceans to live part of their lives, and only to return to Idaho water.
What's your favorite part about Idaho water?
Favorite part about Idaho water is the clean, cold aspect of it.
Yeah, my name's Nancy Mendelson. I work at the Nature Conservancy. Been in Haley 3 years.
And what about water in Haley compared to the Pacific Northwest?
In the Pacific Northwest, we had a lot of water, a lot of rain, and moving here was a big change. Not just, with water, but with a lot of things. But water-wise, my gardening's different, and dealing with the water shortages that Idaho has had, recent, not so great snow years, has been really interesting. I'm much more conscientious about my use of water than I ever have been. And I remember a TV ad at the Super Bowl that the Nature Conservancy did that said, turn off the water when you're brushing your teeth, and if everybody did that, it would make a world of difference.
I'm Chris Olenek.
And what about water in the Wood River Valley? What do you think of?
When I think of water in the Wood River Valley, especially in the summer, I think about how much we enjoy going to the rivers to cool down, and our hikes in the summer up to lakes. And then that's what I think of. We've spent summers and summers up at Redfish, my son, on the lake all day long, paddle boarding, or fishing for minnows with his little net, just spending the whole day in the water.
I'm Linnea Petty,
Huh?
and for work, I'm the food production manager for the Hunger Coalition, which provides emergency food assistance to Blaine County. So we're highly involved in food. So water is super important for all of the food that we're producing for the emergency food assistance in our area. Within our gardens, we're using drip tape and netafin to make sure that we're maximizing the water getting into the soil. In this dry, arid climate, the wind and sun dramatically impacts the water retention in the soil and the amount that we have to use. So we're constantly looking at ways to maximize that. And we also feel really obligated as an organization working on this smaller scale to grow food versus on a commodity crop scale, to try different ways of irrigation and make sure we're not wasting any water, especially given the climate around here with water shortages.
So you're out here looking at your watering system all the time?
We are. We look at it daily, sometimes twice daily, fixing repairs or leaks in the irrigation system as soon as they come up. And for future projects, we're actually on the cusp of designing a small farm to produce even more food for our organization, and that has required tons of research into irrigation techniques that are completely different from what we see in the commodities type agriculture around us here in Idaho. So we're looking to other forms of tape and tubing to, again, deal with our arid environment of wind and sun, and yet still get crops to grow, but not be spraying it into the wind.
I'm Paddy Mcelvoy, Paddy Mcelvoy. And what does water mean to me? Water is all-consuming for me. It's why I came to Idaho. It's to play in water, fish, to ski. I'm a fly fishing guide. It's my livelihood. It's my passion. It's how I met my wife. It's all-consuming for me. Water is what makes me want to get out of bed and go play outside in the morning. We live in the best fly fishing in America, and it's because of all this white stuff that falls out of the sky. It feeds rivers like the Big Wood and the Big Lost and my personal favorite, Silver Creek. Water's what I go slide around on behind the Nordic team kids I coach in the winter. Water's what covers the Boulder Mountains and the Pioneers and the Sawtooths, and the places I love to go ski touring in the winter. Water is what makes my mountain bike trails go from dust to brown powder. Water is what we have to make the Idaho desert mountain confluence here habitable. And it feeds my garden, which is kind of a big deal to me, because I grow and breed vegetables from all over the world up here in the mountains, and no water, no veggies. I live in the desert. I was born in a desert in New Mexico. I moved to a desert in Idaho, and deserts their defining feature is the lack of water. And so whatever little bit you get is precious, and it's precious where I grew up, and it's precious here.
As you said, you've always lived in the desert. How do you think that it's affected the way you feel about water? And how do you think that desert dwellers are different than people who live where there is more water?
I think that if in the world you could pick up gold nuggets every 2 feet, no matter where you were, gold would be worthless. And it's the same thing about water. People who grow up in places where water is scarce value water more. And I think growing up in the Chihuahuan Desert and moving to the Idaho High Desert just makes me understand more how precious every little bit is, you know. In the winter, it's great to get 2 feet of snow at a time, but I'm excited when we get 2 inches, because every snowflake counts.
Yeah, hi, I'm Eric Clarkston. I live in Haley, Idaho. I moved here in 1978, and I moved here for the quality of the environment, clean air. We have a gorgeous river that runs right through the valley. We built a home about 2 or 3 blocks away from the Big Wood, just a few hundred yards south of here. And my son was raised there, spending all of his childhood after about age 7 or 8, clear past high school, down recreating at the river. And for him, it was a Tom Sawyer lifestyle. And he now lives in Paris, France, and he misses this place desperately.
So how about you, Eric? How do you connect with the water?
I'm getting back into a fishing pole in my hand after an absence of a long time. And so being on the river here or else over on Copper Basin, it's a real treat.
They're wonderful. Do you think most people think about the river in central Idaho and think about the water, or how important is it?
I can't speak about anyone who lives south of Bellevue other than the fact that ag land, and if you're making your living from water, it's critically important. On up here, it's just a source of recreation and something to go down and look at. And we're blessed to have the quality of water we do have here.
That's great.
My name is Gail Ansley.
And you are with the Peekaboo Desert Farm?
I own and operate Peekaboo Desert Farm.
Okay.
I raise goats, and I use the milk to make cheese and yogurt.
So goats, and so I was really noticing the desert in the name, and then the subject is water. So how does
if you come here, I'll show you all the flavors, and then
how does water
affect your farm and livelihood and all?
Well, actually, my farm is we have 90 shares of
our lemon-curd goat yogurt, right there.
Called Magic Reservoir.
And
yes,
they control the farming. Right?
Yes,
Yep.
they and so those 90 shares will water the part of my farm that grows the alfalfa that we raise for our goats. And if there is no water, then of course you have nothing to feed your animals.
That's our yogurt.
I mean, I do have 800 acres, but part of it is just rangeland. What else do you add to the vanilla yogurt? And so it's a vital thing. If you don't have water, you have nothing. You can't farm. You can't even live. You know, a few years ago we lost our well because it went dry, and so we had to re-drill because the original well was drilled with a 4-inch casing, and you can't go down into the 4-inch casing. We had to completely move over and drill all over again, and we had to go 700 feet in order to get water. So water is a very important livelihood of anybody. You know, without water, no one lives.
Right.
No animal, no plant, no nothing.
Right. And so, how long have you had this farm?
We bought it in November of 2012.
Oh, okay. So, because having, like, this is a pretty good year,
This
right?
has been the first year that we will get more.
Magic is full,
right. The first year we had, if I am not mistaken, somewhere around 35 days of water, period. Which is hard to even grow a crop with that many days. And the second year, I think we had 65 or 70 days of water. And so this year we'll actually have what they consider, quote unquote, a full water year. So I will actually get, for the first time since I bought the farm, a third crop of hay. Thank you.
A third crop. Yeah. Yeah.
Typically, if you have water available to you, you can have, the season will allow you to have 3 crops. And so then it's only the water that becomes the problem. And so the first year we had to put in what they call oat hay so that they could harvest the hay, not even go to oats because the oats couldn't even survive. The second year we got 1 cutting of alfalfa. The third year we got 2, and this year we'll actually get 3 if all goes well. Although right now I have another little issue. It has to deal with water, and that is last Thursday we had that little electric storm.
Yeah.
That electric storm took out my pump. And so they came and pulled the pump on Saturday, and of course being the holiday weekend, nobody's open, and that pump has to be what they call rewound before they can then bring it and put it in. So I am without water again, waiting. Even though the water is there available, I can't even access it because we have to wait for that pump to
Right. How does that make you feel, or what?
Well, I guess I'm going to tell you in my optimistic way, and that is that I am a very strong believer in God, and I believe that He will take care of us one way or the other. It may not be what we want, and we are not necessarily going to have everything exactly the way we want, but it will be okay. In the end, it will be okay.
So you have a lot of faith.
I do. And I think to be a farmer, you must have a lot of faith.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I mean, you don't know if that seed's going to come up or not going to come up. You don't know if the weather's going to allow you to have a good crop or not. You don't know. You actually... Just relax. She's talking to me, so don't be rude.
Oh,
and so it's very.
You want to be part of it too? Okay.
So it's very important that you have faith and recognize that there is, in my opinion, that there is a higher power that looks out for us.
Christine Bertal.
Okay, and so water in your life, when you think about water, what's the first thing that just sort of pops into your mind?
I love it. I love water. I grew up swimming all the time, and still to this day still swim, but also I grew up in California and grew up in the drought era of the 70s and skied as a kid, and then we never skied anymore because there was no snow. We never flushed the toilet. We, didn't ever leave the water running when you brushed your teeth, any of that. So I've always been really conscious of water, both being in it and around it, and usage. And I built the house right here next door, and one of my personal commitments was not to use a lot of water in my life, but also in my garden. And so I've got soaker hoses and no grass. I only have a patio in my backyard. And so not only do I not have to water it, I don't have to mow it either.
I'm Floyd, buddy. I live in Haley. My wife.
I'm Yesenia, and we live here nearby, Haley.
So where do you guys connect with water in the Wood River Valley?
Kayaking.
Walking down the Wood River here, and even simply just sitting down and throwing rocks.
So do you walk along the path that's along Draper Preserve here, or?
We do.
Yeah.
We do. Yeah. Just enjoy the water, the sound.
So how important is the river, do you think, to the valley here?
It's very important. I think it's very important. It's where people like to come and enjoy, and the fishing is awesome. The river rafting. So yeah, very important. Water is very important to us, especially in the valley.
Floyd, where do you kayak?
Nope, we do a lot of lake kayaks, so we're actually more of a recreational kayak. We just got done doing Alturas, so we'll go to Redfish Lake, Pettit Lake, Stanley Lake. We'll go all over the lakes. Yeah.
Went to Snake River.
Snake River.
Oh.
Yeah.
Have you gone up to the, is it Heart Lake down by Thousand Springs? I recommend that.
We haven't been there yet.
Yeah, I recommend it.
Try that.
Very cool though.
We good? Mark Davidson. I think about where I grew up. I grew up on a small farm outside of Drum, Idaho, and I think about all the bad things that I actually did to water. When there was a bridge near the town where I grew up that connects Drum to Twin Falls, we used to throw things off of the bridge into the Snake River Canyon because it was a 500-foot drop and it'd make a loud sound. So when you're in high school, you're doing destructive things like this throughout your whole youth. And so I felt like as I grew older and grew more mature and I started to really think about, well, water, the Snake River, like dogs die in it now, I should maybe rethink my relationship to rivers and water. And I grew up fishing and hunting and all those things, but it didn't really strike me as to what we do to water as people, whether it's because of runoff from farming or a variety of other issues related to water quality and quantity. And as I've grown older and I've thought more about what water really means to me, it means everything from providing food for us to providing places to go swim and fish and enjoy some of just the natural wonders of our world. And now I think I feel very much that I owe a lot of my life to water, and so I've done a lot of work in my professional life to try and improve both water quantity and water quality and create spaces for people to go enjoy rivers and lakes and experience what it is to have clean, fresh water to play in, and then also that can be used in growing food for communities.
Awesome. Something I've been thinking about a lot about through this process is how important water was culturally and even religiously where I grew up in a similar environment to yours on the other side of the country. Do you think that where you grew up people felt similarly about water being such an integral part of their lives?
Yeah, I think in Idaho, like many parts of the West, culturally there's this need to put water to use, that it needs to actually work for us. And it does work for us, and we all enjoy those benefits. Cheap energy, for example, through the hydro system. We divert water out on the fields, and to many people, they look at a ditch or a canal and they think, oh, that's a river or a creek. I've heard many people call ditches and canals creeks. But that's a cultural remnant from, I think, our ancestors developing this part of the West and in many parts of the West. And I think at the time, the way we looked and used water reflected our societal needs. And our societal needs are shifting, and I think we're struggling with how to find new ways to deal with our water issues, how we use water, what should we do with, what are some alternatives to current ways we use water, whether it's for electricity generation or for growing food. How do we do that in a more smart, efficient, effective way? And I think that's just, again, our society's shifting, and we're all struggling with, well, what does this mean to us in today's world? And part of that is wrapped up in our cultural identities, whether that's from a religious standpoint or from a just where you grew up.
Awesome. And what's your favorite part about water in Idaho?
My favorite part about water in Idaho, I think, well, this might seem trivial, but I kind of like the smell of it. You know, when you come up to a river, or you're around, or you're getting out of a river, there's this distinctive smell and kind of these senses that you feel when you're around it, and you know when it's clean versus when it's dirty. And so I like that. That's my favorite.
That's an awesome answer. That's what I love about getting off the plane in Haley the most, is you smell the river. Yeah. Awesome.
Maggie Blair.
Yeah. And then if you could talk a little bit about your relationship with water.
Okay.
So you like to river raft?
yes, I like to river raft, and I'm a Chinese practitioner, and there are elements in my world, and water is one of a key element for our life and our being, and our bodies are, I think, 80-90% water. And so our relationship with water on our planet is critical for our health and the health of our planet, and they're so intertwined. And the spirit aspect of water is very significant as well. It engenders inspiration and connection to the heavens and divine energy, and it organizes our being in most fundamental ways. And the flow of life obviously is super important, and the flow of water is congruent with that. And we should treasure every drop of water on the planet. And we are so lucky in Idaho to have clean water and free-flowing water. And the Salmon rivers, for instance, are the longest undammed river system in the lower 48. And we have them in our backyard in Ketchum, Idaho, and we get to go play on them. And my love of water and rafting started when I was in my early 20s. And I have had the good fortune to, for example, float down the middle fork of the Salmon probably 30-35 times. And I love watching the evolution of water and fire in our world and in those systems, and seeing that ecology of fire of 20 years ago versus 5 years ago versus the one that's, you can sometimes float by and it's on fire. A little more excitement than you need, but how water works and how fire works in our environment are amazing. And the importance of water in our world and in Idaho is such a precious gift, and we need to be extremely mindful of how we use it, and we should harbor it instead of waste it. And I think of the Snake River compared to the Salmon River. The Snake River is a very worked river. It works very hard, and it has a lot of pollution from agriculture and fish farms and the big cow industry, factory farms. And the quality and feeling of those rivers is very different one to another. And, in the Salmon River, of course, it's always amazing to see giant salmon swimming upriver on that 800-900 mile. So the salmon on their amazing 800-900 mile journey up from the ocean to spawn in our rivers, at the headwaters of the Salmon River and up in Bear Valley Creek and Redfish Lake and all the Cimarroy Valley and up the Lost River. Well, not the Lost River so much, they can't get there, but the salmon as it goes up from there. And, those are things we need to protect and treasure and save for all the future generations. So I would love to see all those dams on the lower Snake come out, those 4 lower dams that produce very little power that we could easily make up with conservation measures. And that would help promote, $1 billion salmon industry. And we need to, declassify the port of Lewiston. Idaho doesn't need an inland port. And it's silly to put our grain in barges and send them down the river and put our salmon in trucks and truck them up the road. Let's put the grain in the trucks and the salmon, leave the salmon in the river and get rid of the dams. And so I have lots of great ideas about water, and I love water, and I'm so thankful to live in this state where it's such a precious gift.
My name is Morgan Buckert, Morganbuckert. Water is something I think about every day. I grew up on the Gulf Coast where we get 30 to 60 inches of rain a year, and water is such an integral part of our life. With the Gulf Coast, with rivers, And it's such an important thing, it even becomes part of our religious experience. Having the right amount of water at the right time makes a huge difference whether crops and animals will succeed or fail throughout the year. There's been lots of floods, there have been a lot of droughts, and it's something we think about all day, every day. And I found it really unique since I've moved to Idaho and the arid West and how people view water differently here. And I feel as a newcomer that people don't respect water as much as we did where I grew up and take it for granted because it's delivered in a canal or out of the ground. In the mid-19th century, the US government encouraged farmers to move west and rain would follow the plow, and it hasn't. And it hasn't for 150 years, and that system is failing, and it's time to change and think differently about how we use water in the West. Saying that, I moved to Idaho because of the water. I moved here to fish. I moved here to recreate and enjoy what little precious water we do have in the desert. And Silver Creek is why I live here. It was my source of income for many years. As a fly fishing guide, it's where I met my husband and got married, and it's the most important part of my life. And without that gem in the desert, I wouldn't be here.
Name?
Heidi.
Heidi. And what brings you to the market today?
Well, just love to buy some local stuff, seasonal. Because
Well, so what brought you to this part of Idaho?
Oh, the mountains, the clean air.
The mountains?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love the mountains. I can't live in the city.
Yeah.
I like to do a lot of stuff outdoor and then just enjoy it, just to have a simple life.
Yeah.
That's all.
Do you have a favorite water spot or river or around here? Or
well, I just
thing to do in water, or?
Well, I just enjoy when I find those kind of cold springs, fresh water. I love that kind of water because it tastes different.
Oh.
And yeah, it's just so.
Wait, cold springs, you said?
The cold springs, yeah.
Oh, so where do you find?
Well, you have to go very high to the mountains to find those kind of waters. And I find somewhere in the desert too, but it's just you have to know where.
Aha.
Yeah, I was just a couple 2 weeks ago. I was in Canada drinking those ice-filled waters. So it's different.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, that makes me thirsty. Or I want that cold water.
Yes.
But so around here, is there?
Around here, well, I usually like to what did I say? We have some kind of pencil to sterilize the water because
to sterilize it.
Yeah.
Oh, so you can't. It's not this. It's not really available here.
Yeah.
So okay. Yeah. So is it? Why do you think that is, or what?
Well, because it's just the animals to the wild animals.
Because the wild, and is it not high enough, or okay?
Yeah, that's.
In Peru, could you find this cold springs water, and do you still have to sterilize it, or
no?
Oh.
We don't have to sterilize, but it's just in the high altitude too. So.
The high altitude.
Yeah, because in Lima, the water tastes horrible. And I know a couple cities in here. It's the States. I was in I think it was North Dakota. The water is it's awful.
It's awful.
Yeah. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think of the taste of water. Yeah.
Yes. And like I say, water is very precious.
Yeah.
So you have to take care.
Yeah.
Be more conscious.
I'm Patty Lucine with the Wood River Land Trust, and I'm a project coordinator at the I've always loved water, be it rivers or swimming across lakes or being in the ocean. I'm a scuba diver, but I think ultimately it's because I'm a Pisces. So I've always thought the water is my second home, and I'm just a little fish.
And so, where do you touch water in the Wood River Valley or its history? How do you connect with water here locally?
Probably through hiking to high alpine lakes. That would be my first place, and then just being on the Big Wood River, being in our local environment.
And how do you see the community affected by the watershed that we have here, and especially the river, since you mentioned that?
Well, I think of the snowpack too, as well as when I think about the river, because it lengthens the use of our river. So how do I think about that in terms of our community? I think there's a lot of different ways that we use the river and we depend upon the river. And from the farmers who've been here for, over 100 years, and the ranchers that have been farming in this area and then south of here. And then I also...
So the river is definitely a big part of our community. Obviously, we're named after it, the Big Wood River. But also, rivers can both be a way to divide or to bring together a community. It can be a boundary or it can be a gathering place. So I'm just curious, what is your feeling about how the river impacts our community?
Well, in my work, I'm speaking from the Wood River Land Trust side, what I would say is that there's funny alliances and coalitions that you wouldn't expect. And then the divisions might be a little bit predictable, and that the divisions really are that the farmers have lost their water for over 60 or 70 years. So when they see golf courses and subdivisions go up, it's hard for them because that's their crop that they're not having as income that year when they're curtailed because there's not enough water. So I think the divisions are somewhat around tourism, recreation, and then livelihoods. But there's opportunity and there's coalitions forming. And the other thing I've noticed in talking with people in regards to water shortages and water curtailment is that initially people really want to make sure that their piece is taken care of, so that once they're whole or somewhat whole, they can then go out, and then start including others. And so I think that's a really natural thing that everybody needs to figure out their own sense of wholeness, and then they can then work as coalitions. So a coalition that I'm thinking about now is that the conservationists, what we want to see is water in the river, so that we're supporting wildlife and the fishery all the way through the Wood River, all the way down as far as we can, past Magic Reservoir and into the Little Wood River system. So that brings a coalition for conservationists with traditionally the farmers that are way below us. Another way too that I think about in regards to divisions and connections is really just how we operate in society. And for us, dealing with a water call, one of the ways that I've come up with dealing with it is whether we litigate or we collaborate. And so really just our way of moving forward and resolving it, whether we're trying to delay it, how we're going to spend that money, because it costs a lot of money to litigate. So I think that that's a little bit of a division in our community, because we're not all going forward together in the same direction yet. I think we will be eventually. We're just not there yet.
How do we get there?
Well, maybe either by litigating or collaborating. And of course, I think we're all going to win more, and we're going to win more as a society when we collaborate, because then we recognize the importance of everybody's value and connection to water versus just our own, and being protectionist about our own needs.
What's your personal connection with water? Where do you connect with water here?
Well, I've always loved water, be it the ocean or the beaches, the rivers. I used to swim across lakes. I'm a scuba diver, and yet ultimately I think it's because I'm a Pisces, just a little fish. So that's my second home, if not my first home. That's where I find much comfort, is just being in the water.
And what about here?
What's my connection to water here? The probably my first choices are the high alpine lakes, hiking into the sawtooths or the boulders or the pioneers, and getting to that area that's so intact as a ecosystem, and being in that beautiful cold water.
Well, I understand that the Wood River Valley is high desert, which means water is precious, and so I do silly things like pour the stale water from my cat dish into my watering pot for my plants in the house. And I've thought about getting those rain barrels for outside for those occasional gully washers that we have, so I can water my flowers outside with them.
So what's your favorite time playing in water?
If I were to play in water, I like being in a raft on the Middle Fork or something like that. On my bucket list is learning to swim, but I don't like my face in water, so that's problematic. Sometimes I like to ride my bike through the sprinklers that's going over onto the road or whatever, because it's hot and the water's cool.
I'm Paddy Mcelvoy. This is my wife, Morgan Booker. And we both moved here because of water. And one of the many things that water here means to me is it means getting to know and fall in love and get married here on both of our favorite river in the world, on Silver Creek. Our first date was down on the creek. I asked Morgan to marry me during the brown drake hatch on the creek, a hatch that really only happens in good water years. And we got married on the water here. And nothing water related has ever happened to me that is more important than that.
It's really interesting to think that we both came here for the same reason at different times, and that's what really brought us together, and how we'd like to spend most of our free time is fishing on Silver Creek. It's a really special place to us. That's what brought me to Idaho, was interning for the Nature Conservancy at Silver Creek, and Paddy moved here to fish Silver Creek for just a few days.
Yeah.
And it's been more than a decade for both of us, and we were both fishing guides. Well, Paddy still is a fishing guide, and I've moved on to return back to the Nature Conservancy and work protecting my favorite place in the world. So
Our favorite place in the world.
Yep.
I'm Jonna Moore, and I work for the City of Haley, and I work in the utility billing department. So I work with water every day. I watch how much water is used in the City of Haley and monitor leaks and make sure that leaks are repaired so people don't use too much water. So I'm very interested in water.
Hey, my name is Katya Kasson, and thinking about water, I think water is like life, and watching a river is just like life, with fast flowing and calm areas and eddies and ups and downs, and all of the components of water is what makes life to me.
I'm Jabara. By the way, we're all from Haley in the mountains of Idaho, and I put a 5-gallon bucket in my shower when I'm heating it up so that I can transfer that to my garden instead of wasting it. And I noticed, pertaining to Jonna as well, that when I took my sprinkler system offline, I used 1/3 of the water that I use by watering by hand.
My name is Karen Fawcett. And what I know about water is that I didn't drink enough yesterday, and in this high desert climate, I hit the wall this morning. I got dehydrated and I felt plumb awful.
So then you drank some water and you felt better.
That would have been a good idea, wouldn't it?
Farmworth, Advanced Irrigation Solutions.
So, can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with water?
So kind of what I do is, as a company, we focus on water conservation through landscape from all sorts of sides, from the design side to the implement, and then smart irrigation helping with the water savings. I found a long time ago, probably 15 years ago, that there was a correlation with water and landscape, and that I noticed a long time ago that we were overwatering very badly. Like most landscapes, I would say on average overwater 50%. On average, and it's not just, it's everywhere across the country, but this valley is just as bad. We overwater at least 50%, if not more, and it comes from a bad design to start, a bad install, and then not using smart technology. Because smart irrigation, you know, it's measuring either the weather every day or the moisture in the ground every day to determine how much water to put back. Whereas typically the standard process is we irrigate every day, and we don't need to. I've got sites that irrigate once every 4 or 5 days in the hot of July, and they look lush green. So as an industry, there's a lack of education. I'll be honest with you. There's education out there, but there's a lack of people in my industry wanting to seek out that education. They don't have any desire because they're not being made to. Until the consumers themselves start requesting this stuff, I don't see it changing. I do a little bit, and we just do stuff all over the state. Actually, I even go to Wyoming quite a bit too, and help people with this. And on average, we cut water between 40 and 60%. It's really easily to do, honestly. So, and anything else?
So how does water usage in the local area compare to other places that you've been?
Compared to other places, I would say it's about the same.
Yeah.
I've done stuff down in Long Beach, California, and it's no different. You know, one of the major overwater things that waste water is what they call uniformity on sprinklers, and it has a lot to do with the spacing of the sprinklers and then the pressure at the sprinkler head. And I've done audits all over this valley. I've done stuff in other areas. I've done stuff in Arizona, in Phoenix, Arizona, down in Long Beach, California, and it's the same. The uniformity ranges between 30 and 40%, and it should be 70% minimum. That gives you an idea where we're at water-wise. The difference between 30% uniformity and 70% uniformity is double to triple the amount of water to keep that landscape green. That's the difference. It adds up to a lot of water, and nobody's doing it right.
So what made you want to get into this?
You know, I would say probably about 10 years ago, I noticed that water was becoming an issue and was going to get more of an issue, and I felt like I've been in the industry for 20 some years, and I came from the golf side where they do things a lot more efficiently because they have to, because they're in the public eye a lot, and I kind of learned about design and that kind of stuff, and I felt like I had the knowledge that there was a need for somebody that knew how to save water. And then the other problem is there's all this great technology out there from little residential homes. You know, this technology will save water that costs $200 for a small standard home. But the problem is the technology is so far over the head of most of our landscapers in the industry, most of our people in the industry, that they're scared of it and they don't want to use it. They want to keep it simple, which that's fine. We can still keep it simple, but let's use the technologies that's available. And that's kind of why I started doing this, because I saw that nobody was doing this and they were going to need help to do it, basically. Right. So I do everything from really small technology to, you know, I do stuff like school districts, you know, big HOA developments, you know, help them get this technology installed, and sometimes we operate it for them too, because water management is a huge part of saving water. Understanding how to water, you know, instead of let's just put down 60 minutes a day. That's not what it's about, you know. We gotta water, you know, sun and shade. We need to separate those kind of things. We need to water different plant types different, you know, and then different soil types, you know. Every soil type has an infiltration rate, how fast it intakes water. You need to match that with the sprinkler type it's watered, and a lot of times that doesn't happen. So a lot of times you get water put down, and a lot of it runs off to the low spots, so you don't get water where you're putting it. So that's kind of why I started doing it, because nobody knows how to do any of that. And I still see it today, and it's 10 years later, still nobody knows how to do it. And I'm still helping people do that. And that's one of the things I do and why I started it, kind of. So.
Are people generally receptive?
Homeowners, yes. Landscapers, no. Yes. No matter where I go, the homeowners are pretty receptive, and they want to make a change. The biggest part is a lot of people don't realize how much water they're actually wasting. I mean, it's astronomical, the amounts. The average, I would say, here in this valley, in the northern valley, I would say most things are being overwatered by 500,000 to 1 million gallons a year. South Valley, in your Haley area, you're probably around that 200,000-300,000, maybe 500,000 in the lower range. It depends on the size of the property, but almost all of them by half at least, if not more. It's just, some of the landscapers are very receptive and want to learn, and then it's kind of two sides of a coin. One side loves having me help and wants me to help learn, and the other side won't even talk to me. So, and it's kind of interesting to see which ones in the valley. I'm not going to name names or anything, but I would honestly say a couple of the bigger companies in the valley won't even listen, aren't concerned about it. And then the kind of your small to mid-range ones, they're not the biggest ones, but they're not the smallest ones, they're kind of right in the middle. Those are the companies that are really paying attention and really trying to learn. And those are the ones that, in my opinion, that are starting to edge out the other guys, because they're doing quality work and people are noticing. And everybody's noticing that water's an issue. So if they know what they're talking about and they go talk to people, it helps. So.
Yeah. So when you say that you started to realize that water was an issue and was becoming more of an issue, was it anything in particular that drew your attention?
Yeah. So I started noticing, how badly properties were overwatered. When you walk on a property and it's just squishy wet, that's not correct. And I knew there was a problem there. And then the other thing that kind of drew me to this is the technology side. I started seeing how much of an issue people were having with it. Like, they literally would put it on, and I actually have a couple projects that I actually did, and this kind of made me notice this. I did these projects, put on a smart controller, got the system totally dialed in, uniformity fixed, everything, cut the water use. On one property, I think I cut the water use 700,000 gallons. I ran it for the first year to show them what it could do. I turned it back over to the maintenance company. A year later, I went back. They'd taken the smart controller off the wall and put on a standard controller, and the water use was already almost back up to where it was. And I had at least 3 or 4 properties I saw that on. I started asking some of the local suppliers that supply these and what their thoughts were. And kind of the same thing I came to is they're taking them off the walls because they don't understand how to use them. Because these controllers won't allow you to flood irrigate a property. Because the mentality is, and I understand it, their job is to keep it green, but there's another way to go about it. Their job is to keep the property green. If it's not green, they come in and crank the water up to get it green, okay? Well, instead of doing that, my philosophy is I put on a smart controller, but I let the homeowner know when I put it on, is like, look, I'm gonna put this on, but this is gonna show you all the problems in your sprinkler system. So you're gonna start seeing yellow spots, and then we'll address it from there. So we do the smart controller, and then when it starts showing spots, I bring the homeowner out and I start showing them, say, this is why this is a problem. We need to fix this. This is a problem here. So that they understand, instead of just, it's not green, take that controller off the wall and put on one that'll let me flood irrigate it, basically, and overwater. Because those smart ones won't let you overwater. That's why they don't like them a lot of times, is because they can't overwater. And they don't take the time to educate the homeowner on, look, I'm gonna put this on, this is gonna save water, but at the same time, it's gonna show you all the problems. Because any system, smart controllers are great, but on a bad irrigation system, it's gonna show you every problem that system has. Because what it's assuming is you're applying the water evenly. So when it's adjusting things, it's adjusting things evenly, right? Whereas with uniformity issues, what happens with uniformity is basically one area is getting drowned, this one's getting just the right amount of water, that one's burning up. So you have to water to the dry spot. When you're watering to the dry spot, everything else drowns. So that's what uniformity does. And if smart controllers are great, but the first thing they're going to show you is all the problems with the system. So that's kind of why I started doing this, because there's that need. And there's nobody else that I know of doing this.
So can you speak a little bit to the importance of water? Do you have anything to say?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If we don't start changing what we're doing, we're not going to be able to water our landscapes, I think, personally. It might be 10 years, it might be 20 years, depending on how bad we consume, but it's coming. If we don't change things, I think in the next 3 to 5 years in this valley alone, we're going to see water restrictions, big water restrictions. Like like people being cut off. Like they're already starting to do it right now, where if you're watering more than a half an acre and you don't have the water right for that, you either have to quit watering that extra area or you have to get a water right for it. So, but the problem with that is we're getting less and less snowpack usually in the mountains every year, less runoff. This year was a little exception, but it just seems like a trend. So as that happens, basically what's going to happen is the people with the oldest water right are going to get the water. And then everybody else is going to be asked to cut back 20, 30, 40, whatever it is, %. And there's not one landscape in this valley that's going to survive on that much less water the way they're currently watered. If we were to fix them and do them right, I've got some landscapes up here that would survive on 20% less water than what the allowable rate would be, because they're done right. I've got a couple up here. I've got one that waters about once every 4 or 5 days right now in July, in hot August. Because it's uniform, it's got a smart system, but also one of the things that's crucial to using less water is I've got those root zones down 4 or 5 inches already. And it has more of a root zone to pull water from, so it doesn't need the water every day, because it's got a reservoir it pulls from. If you were to check any landscape in the valley, it's got a 2-inch root zone down. It needs water every day. You get down 4 to 6 inches root zone, then it can water every other day. But water is going to become an issue. I think it's just going to get worse. I mean, look what's happening in California. If you talk to any well driller in this valley, and not just here, across Idaho, I talk to them all over the place, you know what they're doing the most of? Drilling wells deeper. So what does that tell you? The groundwater is dropping. So at some point, they are not going to allow us to use groundwater for landscape. And then there's just not enough surface water to go around. So the way the groundwater is dropping, at some point they're going to tell us we can't use it anymore. Well water for irrigation. That's what I see happening. And it's going to have to be just used for surface water. And then if you have water rights, surface water, you'll be allowed whatever's available based off your water right. And anybody that had a well is a junior water right holder. So they're going to be last on the list to get water. So that's why I kind of see it's such a need, because it's headed that way. Everybody's just so blind to it because it's not an issue like now. You know, as a society, one of those societies that until it's a problem, we don't care. Whereas it's going to be a problem. It's just a matter of time and when. So.
Absolutely. Are there any last comments that you want to get in? Anything else?
You know, I guess the thing I would say is, you know, I don't know how to do it, but I think the best way is we got to get the word out to the consumers, because the consumers are going to be what makes them change. You know, the other thing I would like to see personally as a professional, I would love to see the state make a mandate or change the law so that it's more like an electrician or a plumber, where they have to have a journeyman, somebody who's had to have passed a test in order to put in sprinklers. Because right now, anybody with a shovel can put it in, and that's the problem. Is we need professionals, people who know what they're doing, putting these things in, and right now anybody can do it. Not only would that bring the quality up, it would bring everything up, the quality of the irrigation, you know, everything. And until either that is done or the consumers make the actual installers do it, they're not going to change. They're going to keep doing it the same way they're doing it. You know, and I'm fixing, you know, I'm doing a lot of work, but I'm one company. I'm probably fixing 10% of what's being put in out there. So it's just not enough. So that's probably.
My name's Courtney Gilbert. When I think about water in the valley, I tend to think about recreation. I think about going to Redfish Lake. I think about Silver Creek. So I think about bodies of water that we're really lucky to be able to enjoy, that are really beautiful. And then I also think about agriculture. I think about the Bellevue Triangle and all the irrigation that I see there. I think about living near the Big Wood. I live just a couple of blocks from the Big Wood, and how much fun I've had over the years just going there and skipping rocks with my kids, and watching my dog swim. And I think about trying to cut down on how much water we use at home, which, you know, seems like an ongoing battle. Slowly pulling up some grass and replacing it with other types of vegetation or different kinds of landscaping.
Carrie York, I live in Haley, Idaho.
So Carrie, where do you connect with water?
Probably mostly just right here along the Big Wood. I live about a mile from the river, and I walk my dogs here frequently. I ride my bike, I take walks. I think it's one of the most beautiful natural features of our area, and what a
Michael Olenek. I know in the Intermountain West where we live right now, water is certainly a huge issue, and it's getting worse and worse every year. More people, less water, less rainfall, less snowpack. It just impacts us every day. You see it everywhere.
Absolutely. And so you've kept up a trout-friendly lawn. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I want to call myself righteous about it, but I try to be good. I use water, but I try to use it wisely and correctly. I do have the trout-friendly lawn. I water my turf every 5 days. I do a deep watering. I try to encourage deep root growth, so my plants can go, my lawn can go for 5 days or more without water. I've taken all my drip irrigation beds and tuned them back so much. I have some beds that haven't come on yet this year. And I monitor my water usage every month when I get my city utility bill. I look at it, compare it with previous years to see how much I've used. My last bill I just got, I thought my statement was a little high. So I went right over to my controller and dialed it back 25% to use that much less water.
And how would you assess awareness of water resources in the valley?
It's sad. It really is. In the landscaping industry, there are far and few between that take it seriously. There's far and few clients that take it seriously too. I'm dealing with an issue right now that the people, what they're doing with water is criminal. That's what I think.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would like to add about water as recreation or the resources?
Well, not so much for recreation. I don't think the problem will ever get to be solved until the cities start treating water not as, I don't know how to rephrase this, but they need to charge for what it's worth. And that's the only way to get people's attention, is to make them pay for it. And that's sad, because the odd even watering doesn't do anything. It just people need to pay bigger bills and they'll use less water. The one thing I've always tried to do is train my lawn to use less water, and to do that you need to stress it a little bit, make it go look for water, and I don't water early in the spring. I try to go as long as I can. I'm not watering in May, I'm not watering in April. I let those grass plants put down deeper roots. I increased my root depth from 3 inches to over 6 inches the last couple of years, and that's a huge reservoir of water for that, or of soil for that plant to draw water from. In doing that, I've cut my irrigation use from 3 years ago. For 6 months of the year, May through September, I used 122,000 gallons, of which 42,000 is domestic. 2 years ago, I used 122,000, 42 of it was domestic, and last year I used 77,000 gallons, 42 of which was domestic. So I cut my water usage by over a third, maybe even more. And my lawn's fine. It works.
Hi, I'm Ken Brannon, and I am the priest at St. Thomas Episcopal Church in Sun Valley. And favorite water spot, I think alpine lakes of any sort. Whenever I'm doing a hike, if I can end up at a lake, that makes me happy. Camping at Stanley Lake this week, and visited other lakes in the past few weeks, so love the alpine lakes. And I think for me, the way I connect with water is, still water, I think, is powerful for me. I like the running rivers as well, but I love the still waters of the lake. But also in my profession as a priest, the waters of baptism are really important. We talk about how people are washed and cleansed and kind of reborn through water. And in the Episcopal Church, we use a little bit of water and we pour it on people's heads. Obviously, there's some denominations where it's total immersion into the water. But water plays a really important role in the Christian faith. And so that's a very important connection I have with water.